Once you've got the form of the subjunctive, the next question, of course, is how is it used? There are 6 main uses you're going to encounter in the New Testament. Each of these is, as I've suggested, a red flag type of circumstance. That is, you might see a subjunctive and wonder what is going on in this clause, or you might see the other kind of trigger that is going to suggest that you've got a different kind of clause to a straightforward statement, and then think, oh, I might have a subjunctive coming up. Let's keep my eyes open for it. So I'm going to work through each of those 6 in turn and think about how the subjunctive is used and what the trigger word is that will let you know that this is what you're expecting to see. First of all, indefinite clauses. These are characterised by the English word ever, for which the Greek equivalent is an. So you've learned hos, who. You now have hosan, which you might see as one word or you might see as 2, meaning whoever. You've learnt a, meaning if. Now you have ean, if ever. You've learned hote, when. And now you have hotan, whenever. So if you see an, you're expecting a subjunctive, and the an is equivalent to the English ever. Now, we don't actually always say ever in English. If you think about it, you're probably just going to say if, not if ever. But it's something neat that Greek can do. It can make things very indefinite. So start by putting the word ever in when you see an. See if it makes sense. If it doesn't, just think about how you might want to express things to be indefinite. The second context you're going to see are purpose clauses. These are in order to in English. There are other ways of doing these, which we'll look at in chapter 18. But for now, in order to can be expressed using hina plus a subjunctive. So your trigger word this time is hina. Think about this in context. We go to the house in order to see our father. You're going to have erchometha pros tenoikian hina blepomen ton patera. And you could add the out on for our, humon even, of us. So here, hina is going your in order to, and you've got a subjunctive in blepomen with that lengthened omega, giving you a subjunctive ending there. Erchometha, we go, pros tenoikian, to the house, hina, in order, blepomen, to see, ton pater humon, our father. You might find that you're saying, so that we might see our father instead. That will be fine. It's an alternative way of translating the subjunctive in a purpose clause. But start with in order to. However, how often do you say in order to in English? Probably not that much. You may find you actually just say to in English, and that's absolutely fine. So if you wanted to translate it as we go to the house to see our father, that would be absolutely fine, as long as you realise that what you're doing is a purpose clause there, that in Greek would be expressed potentially by hina and a subjunctive. We'll look at this more later. Exhortations. Now, these come under the language jussive or hortatory, which come under 2 Latin terms, eubeo, meaning I order, or hortor, meaning I encourage. As a summary, they are a first-person command because Greek can use its imperative for second and third person. But how do we say let's go or let me think? Greek doesn't have an imperative for doing that. In English, it's therefore the equivalent of let me or us. That's not marked by a particular trigger word, but it is always going to be first person and in the context where you might expect a command. So the same sort of contextual background, like short phrases, like phrases with vocatives in them to address a group, even if that's yourself, like speech. So the same places in which you might see an imperative are going to be the kind of place where you might see adjussive subjunctive, except it's only going to be first person. I'm going to use the word adjussive. Now, what people say is you can only encourage yourself, you can't order yourself, so people will use the term adjussive for the plural and hortatory for the singular. Personally, I think that's a bit nonsensical, so I'm quite happy to use the term adjussive for all of them. So to give you an example, let's go would become erchomotha in the present or elthormen in the aorist. Deliberation. These are in effect rhetorical questions. You're therefore going to see an interrogative. And by an interrogative we mean a question word. So you might get something like ti poieso. Your interrogative and your subjunctive there are marking what's going on. What should I do? Now, using the first person, it's not easy to see that this is definitely a subjunctive. That could be a future, but this is the aorist subjunctive. What should I do? It's easier to see in a different person. If I made it what should we do, poi sormen, the subjunctive is easier to see. What should we do? You're deliberating, you're asking a rhetorical question, you're thinking about these things, probably to yourself. You will see these several times in Luke. Prohibitions. You've seen lue in the present, giving you a negative mer lue. Untie, don't untie in the present. In the aorist, things are a bit different. Luson would be your positive, and you'd expect the negative there to be mer luson. That is not the case. You actually have to say mer lu ses and use the aorist subjunctive. So here your prohibition is going to be mer and an aorist subjunctive. The meaning is the same, untie, don't untie, it's an expectual difference. In grammatical terms, you've got mer plus the aorist subjunctive to give you a negative aorist command, a negative aorist command, an aorist prohibition. So, present negatives, imperative, aorist negatives, subjunctive. The final one you're going to get is the emphatic future negative, and this is the only time you will see u plus mer together, and they're always going to be followed by an aorist subjunctive. So you might get u mer poie sormen. We will surely never do. Let's put an object in, touter, these things. So oo plus mare plus an aorist subjunctive are going to give you an emphatic future negative. There aren't very many of these in the New Testament, in the region of 80, but they do occur and they are really important. In summary, the indefinite will be marked by an, purpose by hinne, hortatory is going to be first person, deliberative you'll have an interrogative, prohibition, mare plus an aorist, subjunctive, and emphatic future negative, oo, mare, and the aorist. How do you translate them? Ever, in order to, let me or us. You can have some kind of should in there as your deliberation. Don't, and never or surely never. That's what you're using the subjunctive to do. They're all fairly distinctively marked. Build up a sense of how you see them in each different author, and hopefully they won't prove too much of a challenge.